A retired canine named Rex was supposed to live out his days in peace, until he sniffed something wrong in a child's toy at the airport. Brushed off as an old dog's confusion, Rex wouldn't let it go. What he uncovered next led to a chilling plot involving hidden bombs, surveillance chips, and a nationwide threat no scanner could catch. This wasn't just instinct, it was something deeper. If stories like this move you, real, raw, and unforgettable, don't forget to like and subscribe. One click helps us bring you more Truth Room, stories that stay with you long after the screen fades. The airport buzzed with its usual cocktail of announcements, suitcase wheels, and impatient sighs. It was just past 3:00 p.m. when Officer Daniel Holt stepped off the tram connecting Terminal B to arrivals. His left hand held a navy blue duffel bag, slung over his shoulder stiffened from years on the force. On his right, a German shepherd walked calmly, alert eyes scanning the ground with the mechanical discipline of habit, though his vest no longer bore the words K9 unit. The leash was more symbolic now than practical. Rex had never needed it, even in the most chaotic operations. Daniel wasn't here on duty, not anymore. After 2 decades in the bomb squad and nearly 8 of them paired with Rex, he had retired last spring. The department had offered to find Rex a comfortable foster home, but Daniel had looked them dead in the eye and said, "He's done more for this country than most people I know. He retires with me." Now Daniel was here for something entirely different, to pick up his 7-year-old granddaughter Ava. Her parents, Daniel's daughter and son-in-law, were flying in from Houston to drop her off for a week-long stay. A family thing. Lighthearted, no threats, no danger, just popcorn, Disney Plus, and maybe a few local hikes, if Daniel's knees cooperated. But Rex's nose. They walked through the arrival terminal, a hallway lined with vending machines, arrival monitors, and the scent of mid-grade espresso from a nearby kiosk. Rex was calm, too calm. His ears flicked back once, then again. Daniel noticed it, the micro-signals that had once saved both their lives more times than he could count. "You good, buddy?" Daniel murmured, slowing his pace. Rex didn't answer, of course, but his body language did. His shoulders stiffened, his walk shortened. Something had changed in him. Just ahead, near baggage carousel 6, a small crowd was forming. Passengers clustered around the carousel as bags thumped onto the belt, including a vibrant pink suitcase, a child's hardshell trolley printed with cartoon frogs. Attached to its handle was a mesh pouch holding 2 toys, a plush bear and a plastic fire truck. That's when Rex's behavior shifted entirely. He growled, not loud but low, resonant enough to make 2 women standing nearby. Daniel stopped walking. "Rex," he said more firmly. "Heel." But Rex didn't heel. He took 2 steps forward, then another, his leash tightening. His growl grew deeper, his body went rigid, and then he barked. One bark, then another. It wasn't just any bark. Daniel knew that bark. It had only come out 4 times in their entire career. Once outside a federal building in Boston, once near a loading dock in Kansas, once at an Amtrak station, and the last time Riyadh, the embassy. Rex barked again. The airport security officer at the far end of the hall turned his head, confused but unconcerned. People nearby jumped a little, startled. Daniel's pulse began to rise. "Rex, down," he said sharply, already scanning the area. But Rex's bark didn't stop. He lunged forward, nose pointed directly at the little pink suitcase. His claws scratched across the linoleum floor as Daniel struggled to hold him back. "Sir, is that dog okay?" a woman asked nearby, pulling her child slightly closer. "He's trained," Daniel said automatically. It's probably a scent from another bag." But even as the words left his mouth, he knew they weren't true. Rex's nose pressed against the pink suitcase. He barked again, then pawed at the toy fire truck in the pouch like he'd done 100 times to earn nothing for bomb residue or active component. Daniel dropped to one knee beside him, heart thudding. It was impossible. Rex had been retired for 9 months. He hadn't barked like this since that last mission. Could it be muscle memory? A false alert? Something residual from the plane's cargo hold? Or Daniel reached into his jacket pocket and retrieved the old department badge he still carried. Not out of nostalgia but habit. He held it up to the security officer now approaching. "He needs you to call in a containment team," he said. "Right now." The officer hesitated. "Sir, with all due respect, is this an active threat or—" "I was EOD, Bomb Squad K9, Daniel said. "That dog," he pointed at Rex, who hadn't stopped barking, Hasn't missed a detection in 8 years. You see that suitcase? The one with the fire truck? Yeah, there's something in it. I think we just got lucky. The officer's face changed instantly. Within 90 seconds, the carousel was shut down, the area cordoned off, and the passengers redirected with vague explanations about a misplaced item under review. Daniel stood back as 2 younger officers from the airport's emergency unit approached, wearing gloves and holding detection wands. Rex finally sat down, but his ears remained perked, his chest rising and falling quickly. They removed the toy fire truck first. As it was scanned, the first officer frowned. No heat, no signal, no detonator. But Daniel was watching Rex, not the scanner. Rex hadn't budged. He still stared directly at the toy. Then came the beep, faint, almost dismissible, but the wand passed again and the tone turned red. "Sir," the officer said to his radio, "we have a hit, possibly chemical composite-based." He hadn't planned to be back in this role. He hadn't wanted to be. But Rex had made the decision for him. And this was just the beginning. The scanner emitted a soft green glow as the fire truck was passed through for the 3rd time. "Negative again," the technician muttered, setting the plastic toy on the metal table beside the pink suitcase. No thermal anomaly, no trace of ammonium nitrate, no composite dust. Nothing. The supervisor, a tall woman with clipped speech and a clipboard clutched to her chest, exchanged glances with Daniel Holt. "Your dog's good, sir," she said, not unkindly. "But he's retired now, right? Maybe this is just residual behavior, muscle memory. He could have picked up a benign scent." Daniel clenched his jaw. "He doesn't alert without reason." The supervisor nodded but didn't push. Protocol dictated that with no positive scan and no corroborating alert from a second dog, the threat level remained low. The lockdown was lifted. Passengers were allowed back in. The pink suitcase and its contents were cleared. The mother, a woman in her early 30s with tight braids and a NASA sticker on her laptop, returned to claim it, confusion written across her face. "Is there something wrong with her toys?" she asked, eyeing the now rewrapped fire truck in its plastic sleeve. "Not at this time," the supervisor replied, offering a forced smile. "We appreciate your patience." The little girl, Ava's age, Daniel noted, held tightly to the toy with both arms, her small fingers tracing the plastic wheels. As the mother adjusted her rolling suitcase and began leading the child toward the terminal's outer concourse, Rex didn't move. He stood in a statuesque posture beside Daniel, eyes locked on the toy clutched against the girl's chest. His ears stayed upright. His breath came shallow. Daniel reached down to grip the leash tighter, instinct bristling under his skin. "Come on, Rex," he said under his breath. But the dog resisted, not with aggression but with something far more unnerving, thoughtness. His gaze never shifted, even as the little girl disappeared behind a row of vending machines. He leaned slightly forward, calculating, deliberate. "He's fixated," Daniel murmured to himself, then sighed. "All right, you win." He stepped back, loosened the leash slightly, and began following the girl and her mother at a safe distance, keeping to the side of the crowd. Rex moved with him, calm but hyper-focused, the kind of focus Daniel had only seen when something deadly was in the air. They followed discreetly through the terminal, past the bookstore and coffee carts where the mother stopped briefly to buy water. The girl sat on a bench nearby, holding her toy like it was a teddy bear. Rex slowed, nose tilted forward, watching. Daniel could see it in the way his paws moved, each step measured, each breath purposeful. This wasn't some confused old reflex. Something about that toy still set him off. Daniel pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in 9 months. Captain Morales, his old team lead. "Morales, Dan Holt." There was a beat of silence, then a shift in tone. "Well, I'll be damned. I thought you were in the woods with a fishing pole." "I was," Daniel said, eyes still fixed on Rex's posture. "But I need you to check something for me. I think there's a breach in airport security." Sigh. "Dan, you're retired. Just do me this favor. Pull today's cargo manifest, cross-check with incoming civilian flights from Frankfurt, Bucharest, and Warsaw. Look for any flagged individuals. There's a toy, a fire truck, cleared by TSA scanners, but Rex is giving me the alert posture, full lock." "Retired Rex?" "And it's not a false memory. I've seen that face before." Another pause. "Okay, I'll call you back." Daniel slipped the phone into his jacket and resumed walking. The mother and daughter were now near Gate 14, waiting for a connecting flight. The girl played quietly, rolling the fire truck across the armrest of a chair. Rex lay flat near a row of steel trash bins, nose resting between his paws but eyes watching every movement. A janitor passed. A businessman with a Bluetooth headset muttered into the air. None of it mattered to Rex. He only had eyes for that toy. Daniel sat down a few feet away, pretending to scroll his phone while his eyes flicked between the mother, the daughter, and his dog. Something gnawed at him. The mother was calm, not nervous. The girl was innocent, bored, probably tired from the flight. It didn't add up, which meant if there was something wrong, the real problem wasn't with who carried the toy, but with what the toy had carried through. The mother leaned forward to adjust her daughter's hoodie and smiled as the girl giggled. The fire truck made a small clicking sound as the girl spun its wheels. Rex growled low and short. Daniel stiffened. He stood up. "Stay," he told Rex, and walked toward the family. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said gently. "I know this is strange, but I'm retired law enforcement and I have to ask, has that toy ever been opened? Or has it always looked exactly like that?" She blinked. "The one," she asked, lifting the fire truck. "We just got it at the duty-free in Warsaw. It came sealed. You mind if I take a closer look?" She hesitated. "Is something wrong?" "I'm not sure yet," he admitted. Reluctantly, she handed it to him. He turned it over in his hands. It was heavier than he expected. He shook it slightly, no rattle. The battery hatch was sealed shut with a Phillips screw. The wheels were reinforced, almost too tightly set, and there, a faint seam line down the middle, thinner than it should be, not molded. "Do you have a small coin?" he asked. She reached into her purse and handed him a quarter. He knelt beside one of the wheel wells, pressing the edge of the coin along the seam. The casing split, barely. Inside, nestled in a dense compartment, was what looked like a cylindrical coil. Unusual, almost decorative. But something in Daniel's gut turned. This wasn't a motor. It was handmade, improvised. Something that didn't belong in a child's toy. "Where exactly in Warsaw did you get this?" But before the mother could answer, Rex stood abruptly and began to move. Not toward them, but away toward someone else. Someone who had just entered the gate area. A man in a gray coat, walking stiffly, expression unreadable. A phone in one hand but eyes locked directly on the fire truck in Daniel's hand. Rex broke into a trot. Daniel stood up, heart pounding. The man stopped walking, pivoted. The look on his face was brief but unmistakable, recognition. Followed by fear. Daniel dropped the toy onto the bench, whispered, "Stay close," and began to move, weaving through the crowd as Rex picked up speed. Tracking something invisible, following the scent as if he'd never left active duty. The man turned once more, then bolted, and that's when Rex ran. Rex's sudden sprint cut a clean path through the dense crowd, a blur of tan and black fur powered by something instinctive, something primal. Daniel surged forward after him, weaving past a family dragging roller bags and a teen glued to his phone. The man in the gray coat, whom Rex had zeroed in on, was already heading for the escalators, ignoring shouted warnings from a TSA officer calling from behind a kiosk. As Daniel rounded the corner, he saw Rex hesitate briefly at a trash bin, nose twitching, then veer left, not toward the man now disappearing into the lower level, but back toward the family at gate 14. Confused, Daniel slowed. Rex wasn't chasing a suspect, he was returning to the source. The little girl was crying. Her mother crouched beside her, holding her shoulders gently but firmly. Around them, people had backed away, their curiosity edged with discomfort. Rex had his paws up on the bench now, trying to grab the toy that lay beside the girl's tiny sneakers. His tail was stiff, his body tense, but with clear urgency. The kind of sound that used to get SWAT teams moving without question. But now, in the middle of an airport terminal, it only alarmed civilians and irritated protocol-bound security. "Sir," a TSA officer barked, hurrying forward. "Control your dog or I will ask airport police to remove him." Daniel stepped between them, palms up, eyes firm. He's a retired canine trained in EOD. He's not being aggressive. He's alerting. Means he's not certified anymore. You can't have him behaving like this in a secure area. We've already cleared that bag and that toy. I understand, Daniel replied evenly. His voice tight, but something about it isn't right. It's heavier than it should be, and that internal structure, it's not factory mold. I'm telling you, it's custom. The officer shook his head, glancing toward a colleague already raising a walkie-talkie. We need to de-escalate this, sir. Meanwhile, the little girl whimpered, clutching her mother's sleeve and sobbed, Mommy, make the dog go away. The mother stood slowly, her eyes flicking from Rex to Daniel, then to the growing semicircle of onlookers. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled slightly. I don't want trouble, she said. He just came here to make a connection flight. Please, I have my daughter with me. Daniel softened his stance, nodded. I'm not trying to cause panic, but that dog hasn't been wrong in 8 years. He's never done this for no reason. Rex let out another bark, sharper this time, and then he lunged, just once fast, grabbing the edge of the fire truck with his teeth before Daniel could stop him. The toy tumbled to the floor with a clatter. The girl screamed, recoiling into her mother's arms, and within seconds, 2 TSA agents grabbed Daniel by the arms, wrenching him back. Sir, that's it. Step away from the child. Rex growled protectively, teeth bared in confusion, caught between his handler's voice and the uniformed strangers pulling him away. Daniel shouted, He's trying to save her, don't you get it? He smells something in that damn toy. Back off now, one of the agents snapped, reaching for his taser, not drawing but close. The mother stepped in, holding up her hands. Please, enough. He's scaring her. She looked at Daniel now, eyes wide with both fear and something else. Guilt? Daniel caught it. Just a flicker. Ma'am, he said quietly, breathing hard. I need to know something. Are you or your husband involved in anything dangerous? She hesitated, blinking like she'd just been slapped. What, because this? He nodded toward the toy on the floor, isn't random. That toy came through 3 airports, untouched. You bought it in Warsaw, yeah? Her lips parted. She glanced down at her daughter, then back at Daniel. I didn't buy it. Daniel's stomach turned cold. I found it in our luggage after we landed. I thought it was a gift left by the airline. You know, sometimes they give toys for kids. Who packed your luggage? I did. But the bag wasn't always with us. We had a layover. And she lowered her voice. My husband's a journalist. He's been writing a series. Corruption, money laundering, a shipping company with ties to military contractors. He's made enemies. Thomas Alridge. Daniel knew the name. He remembered the byline, long damning reports about political operatives in Eastern Europe, shadow networks, defense shell company, the kind of stories that got people followed. Or worse. I think, she said, voice cracking, this is a warning, or something worse. We got the suitcase back at JFK. It was missing for 2 hours. You didn't report that? I didn't think. She stopped, shaking her head. We've been warned before. Emails. Weird cars outside our place. Thomas said it would pass. Amy said nothing, but still visibly distressed. His body language screamed alert. He looked back at the mother. You and your daughter need to come with me, quietly, away from this crowd. They said we can't move the toy. They're wrong and we're out of time. Just then, Daniel's phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. He answered quickly. Morales. I pulled the manifest. You were right. There's a flag name on that flight from Warsaw. Goes by Pavel Zarek, alias known for device testing and logistical handoffs. Guess what? He flew through JFK the same hour your girl landed. Daniel's jaw clenched. Did he clear customs? No, he disappeared after secondary screening. Never got back on the flight to Miami. Looks like a ghost. Daniel glanced across the terminal. What if he didn't leave the airport? There was silence on the other end. You think he's still there? I think he left something behind. Daniel lowered the phone. The fire truck lay motionless on the floor. The girl sobbed softly into her mother's shoulder. Rex was still watching it like it might come alive and tear through the gate. The TSA agents, while still wary, had stepped back, confused by the shift in tone. Daniel reached down and picked up the fire truck again. It felt heavier now, almost as if the weight had increased. Or maybe that was just his pulse pounding through his fingertips. Where would someone hide a signal relay in a toy like this? He murmured to himself. And as he rotated the truck slowly, angling it against the light from the terminal skylight, he saw it, barely a millimeter wide, etched into the red plastic above the rear axle. A symbol, carved by hand, a Cyrillic letter, son of a... Something that had just entered from the east wing of the terminal, walking directly toward them, pretending not to notice them at all. The man approaching from the east wing looked ordinary enough. Early 40s, clean cut, wearing a TSA jacket slightly too crisp for end of shift. A radio clipped neatly at his shoulder, his name badge slightly tilted as if hastily attached. Daniel's eyes narrowed, the unease in his chest deepening as Rex froze again. Fixated not on the toy anymore, but on this man. The mother gripped her daughter tightly, watching Daniel instinctively step forward, blocking the stranger's path. "Sir, this area's been cleared," the man said calmly, his voice lacking any true authority. "We'll need to collect that toy now for further examination. I'll escort it myself to the screening bay." Daniel studied his face, too smooth, too rehearsed. "Where's your supervisor?" he asked. The man didn't blink. "I was instructed to take over. There's a secondary screening order being processed for the object." Rex growled low, teeth bared but unmoving. Daniel slowly handed over the fire truck, but his fingers lingered an extra second, forcing eye contact. The man took it and slid it quickly into a padded TSA-issued tote bag slung at his side. "Thank you for your cooperation," he said, turning without delay. As he walked away, Rex let out a sharp whine, then lunged forward. Not to bite, not even to bark, just to follow. Daniel held him back, resisting his own instinct to do the same. Something was wrong. He turned to the agents who'd restrained him earlier. "Who's that?" he asked. The younger one blinked. "That's, Morris, I think. Can you radio him?" The agent hesitated. "You mean yeah, but if he's got orders, radio him now." The agent pressed a button. "Unit 7 to Morris. Confirm item drop at Secondary 2. Silence. "Unit 7 to Morris. Respond." More silence. The agent looked up. "Could be dead zone interference." "No," Daniel said quietly. "That guy's not TSA." The dog took off without hesitation, nose to the ground, weaving through pedestrian traffic with the silent precision of a predator trained in urban tracking. Daniel followed, ignoring shouts behind him, ignoring the mother calling out, "What's going on?" They moved past the gates, past the fast food corridor, through a narrow utility corridor marked staff only, Daniel tailing close behind Rex's determined pace. The lights here were dimmer, flickering in places, the air cooler and heavy with the scent of concrete and chemical cleaner. Rex turned sharply down a ramp, claws scraping slightly against the polished floor, then slowed at a service elevator. He sniffed the base of the shaft, circled twice, then barked once, short and direct. Domitian pressed the elevator call button, heart pounding. It dinged open a moment later, empty. No Morris, no toy. Rex jumped inside and sat facing the far wall, waiting. Daniel joined him, thumb hovering over the panel. He didn't know the lower levels like he used to. Most of this area was reserved for cargo transfer, baggage rerouting, and delivery intake. He hit B3, lowest level. The doors closed, the elevator hummed. Rex's body stayed rigid the entire descent. When the doors opened again, they were met with silence. Dim lights stretched across a wide concrete corridor with metal doors and shuttered service gates on either side. A few crates stood haphazardly near an old dolly, and a single camera hung from the ceiling pointed at an entirely different angle. Dead zone. Rex moved quickly now, nose lowered, navigating through faint traces of scent. Daniel knew that look. He'd seen Rex track blood through sandstorm. The dog was on something. They passed 3 unmarked doors before Rex turned abruptly left into a side hallway and paused in front of a locked metal door. He sniffed the floor, then the seam under the door itself, then whined. Daniel crouched beside him, noting faint scuff marks, rubber soles, one set hut. He pulled out his phone, no signal. "Of course," he muttered. He knocked, still silence. Then he looked down and saw a streak of red. A smear, faint but clear against the gray floor. Blood. Rex growled, then backed away from the door. Daniel scanned for an intercom. Nothing. He stepped back, braced himself, then kicked hard just beneath the handle. The first impact gave a metallic ring. The second dented the latch. The third popped it open. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed faintly over a room that looked more like a forgotten maintenance space than a security hub. On the floor, partially hidden behind a mop bucket, was the real Morris, TSA badge still clipped, mouth taped shut, his eyes fluttering open as Daniel rushed over and tore off the tape. "Help," the man rasped. "He took my ID. Said something about cleaning up a loose end." Daniel's blood ran cold. "Where did he go?" "He said he had to deliver something. South corridor. Storage lockers." "Rex," he barked twice and dashed from the room, pulling Daniel with him. They followed the hallway to a metal stairwell, descending one more level into what looked like a disused section of the airport. Old advertisements curled on the walls. A vending machine unplugged for years leaned against a steel support column. Rex stopped, sniffed, then took off again, leading Daniel past a row of lockers. Their hinges rusted, until they reached a far corner where the concrete turned damp. There, beneath a single flickering light, stood the tote bag, unattended, zipped shut. But the fire truck toy was gone. Daniel approached slowly. Rex circled twice, then growled low. The tote was empty save for a neatly folded jacket, the one from earlier, the one the fake TSA agent wore. Daniel exhaled, piecing it together. Someone used Morris's identity to intercept the toy. But why bring it here? Why hide it, then vanish? He looked around. No cameras, no exits visible. Then Rex's head snapped up, his nose lifting, catching something in the air, and he bolted toward a service grate in the far wall. Daniel followed. The grate was slightly ajar. Behind it, a narrow tunnel. A soft vibration trembled through the metal. Far ahead, something was moving, fast. The tunnel was narrow and stale, the kind of forgotten infrastructure that ran beneath the airport like veins under skin. Used decades ago for maintenance, but now ignored by most staff and completely unknown to travelers. The flickering light from Daniel's phone barely cut through the dark as he followed Rex, who moved with purpose, tail stiff, breath even. The sound ahead, soft metallic tapping like a dragging chain or maybe loose tools, had stopped. But Rex had. He paused briefly at an intersection of the tunnel, sniffed the air, then turned left. Daniel moved quickly to keep up, adrenaline keeping his tired legs moving. His thoughts bounced between the missing toy, the fake TSA agent, the knocked-out Morris, and the realization that whatever this was, it had layers. Layers that hadn't even begun to peel back. Behind him, footsteps echoed. Someone else was following them. Daniel stopped and turned, raising his flashlight. A young security officer stepped into view, hands raised in harmless acknowledgement. He was barely in his 20s, probably fresh out of training. His badge read, "Slightly winded. I heard the dispatch. You went off good. I tracked your ID ping from the elevator log. They said you might need backup." Daniel hesitated, but Rex had already sniffed Owens once and moved on. Which, to Daniel, was confirmation enough. "Good timing, stay close," Daniel said. And they moved forward again. The tunnel ended at a sealed maintenance hatch. Daniel tested the handle. It turned. They emerged into another concrete corridor, its one lined with service closets and old supply crates. It smelled of rust, bleach, and something faintly chemical beneath. Rex stopped near a janitorial bin, nose twitching, then moved toward a trash receptacle bolted to the wall. He sniffed hard at the base, then barked once. Daniel and Owens exchanged a glance. Owens stepped forward, unlatched the top, and peered in. "There's something here," he said, reaching in cautiously. He pulled out what looked like a shattered piece of plastic, a small panel of some kind, jagged at one end. Daniel took it and turned it over in his hands. Embedded in the back was a microchip, and at one corner, a copper coil and antenna wire snaked through a pin-sized slit. "That's not trash," Daniel said. "That's a switch." Owens raised his brow. "Like for a remote detonator." Daniel nodded grimly. "Rex," he said quietly. "Good boy." The dog wagged his tail once, then sat. Daniel examined the wiring more closely. One side had burn marks, fresh. He reached for his phone and snapped a picture, then sent it to Morales with a single caption. "Found this. Need analysis. Urgent." Within a minute, his phone buzzed. Morales had looped in a bomb tech who confirmed the structure was consistent with a remote arming switch. Likely stripped out of. "You ditched the core," Daniel said aloud. "But the toy was the shell. This was the real device." Owens looked stunned. "So that toy, it wasn't just suspicious. It was a bomb?" "Not quite," Daniel corrected. "It was a delivery system. Maybe the fire truck wasn't meant to explode on its own. It was a decoy or a carrier. He held up the broken switch. Is the real device, the trigger or part of it? Owens frowned. Then where's the rest of it? Daniel paused, the question hanging heavy. The truck, he muttered. If they stripped this out, then either they've moved the core elsewhere, or it's still out there, armed, waiting. They both turned at the same time, their thoughts aligning without words. We need to alert the control center, Owens said, reaching for his radio. Not yet, Daniel snapped. Not until we know where it is. If we spook the wrong person, they might activate it. He pocketed the broken component and looked at Rex. Track again. Let's go. The dog moved instantly, following a new trail, one more difficult to parse, but still traceable. They wound through the lower storage level, past idle luggage carts and freight containers marked in on high. Rex stopped abruptly at a metal door marked Consumables. Inside were stacks of sealed packages, catering trays and boxes labeled with international food service codes. Near the back, under a tarp, sat another bin. Rex trotted to it, nose twitching furiously. Daniel stepped forward and peeled back the tarp. There, half buried under paper wrappers, lay a toy airplane, plastic, lightweight, red and yellow. And inside it, barely visible, was a compartment held shut with 2 magnetic snaps. Daniel opened it slowly. Inside, tucked in foam, sat a flat disc no bigger than a cookie, wired with a central lens-like sensor and 6 copper circuits extending outward like a star. Motion activated, Owens guessed. More like proximity light, Daniel said, reaching for a field light and shining it into the compartment. He took another photo, sent it to Morales. His phone vibrated seconds later. Confirmed. That's a microblast device, low-yield, high shrapnel. Not enough to bring down a plane, but definitely enough to maim a crowd at close range. Daniel stared at the toy, then back at Owens. They're not trying to destroy the terminal, they're targeting people. Specific people. Owens nodded slowly. Like journalists? Daniel looked up, connecting everything. The mother. Her husband. He's the story. But maybe the girl, maybe they planted the toy on her so the family would carry it through security, unknowingly delivering the payload themselves. Owens frowned. But if it's still here, why didn't they use it? Daniel shook his head. Something changed. Maybe Rex sniffed it out too soon, maybe the handler panicked. Or maybe... He stopped, turning his head. A scraping sound echoed from just outside the room. Rex growled, teeth bared. Owens reached for his flashlight, and then the lights went out. The lights cut out with a sharp click, plunging the storage room into immediate darkness, broken only by the narrow beam from Owens's flashlight. Rex barked once, short, tense, not out of alarm but alert. Daniel drew his phone again, activating its flashlight as well, the twin beams cutting across shadows now stretching unnaturally long across the storage crates. The sudden blackout wasn't just a maintenance glitch, it was calculated. Someone knew they were here, someone who didn't want this trail followed any further. Stay tight, Daniel whispered. Whoever's out there knows this place better than we do. Owens nodded, already drawing his sidearm with a steady hand that betrayed his youth, his badge still clipped to a vest that looked barely broken in. Rex took a step forward, ears high. You'll secure the door, Owens said, edging left toward the corridor. Daniel didn't argue. Instead, he turned back toward the toy airplane now lying open on the floor, its internal device untouched in its foam casing. His instincts told him to keep it in place, not out of fear of detonation, but preservation. This thing was right, not just proof of intent, but origin. And if he was right, someone had gone to a lot of trouble to make sure it disappeared without a trace. Daniel pulled out his phone again, not to call but to remote access the airport manifest system. He still had access, albeit limited, through an old internal credential Morales had forgotten to deactivate. He navigated quickly, entering the barcode sticker from the toys package, which he had snapped earlier. The search took seconds. A result blinked to life. The toy had come from a consignment crate labeled CNHSV War, shorthand for China, Huntsville, and Warsaw. The tracking trail indicated it had passed through Frankfurt, then JFK, then finally landed here, LAX. 3 layovers, Daniel murmured. All major transit hubs. He scrolled further. The manifest listed the crate as part of a larger shipment marked recreational misc. Toy standard smuggling technique. Hide high-use items inside low-value bulk imports. flying under radar due to the innocuous nature of the description. But what struck Daniel wasn't the contents, it was the handler. Under Initial Custom Screening Frankfurt, one name appeared, T. Belov. He blinked. That name wasn't unfamiliar. He ran it against his notes, then against a secondary custom staff database Morales had set up on a shared Google Sheet. Unofficial but ruthlessly thorough. There it was. Tomas Belov, former customs inspector caught 5 years ago in Brussels for smuggling encrypted satellite parts into Romania. Charges dropped without explanation. His record vanished from the EU system a year later. No active file in Interpol, no red flags in TSA. He was a ghost, except now he was listed again on an inbound toy shipment routed through 3 major cities. Daniel opened his phone mic and spoke quietly. Morales, get me a line to International Customs Liaison in Warsaw. Priority. I need a file pulled on Tomas Belov. I need to know where he is now, who cleared him, and who signed off on that crate. Morales's voice came through the static. Jesus, Holt, you digging through that database I made for the interns. It just saved our asses. Belov's name is on the crate manifest. He's your link. I'll get on it, but Holt, if he's clean on TSA's end, he's either got help high up or they've wiped him again. Daniel already knew. That's what haunted him. He turned back toward Owens. Any movement? Owens shook his head. Nothing yet, but I did a sweep outside. Power still on in the main terminal, just this block's down. Daniel's gut twisted. Which means this was targeted. Owens nodded grimly. Someone knew we were down here. Daniel crouched next to Rex, scratching behind the ear. You still on it, buddy? Rex gave a soft wuff. No sniffing toward the left wall. Then let's go. They followed Rex through a service corridor that smelled of mold and stale air. Each step echoing in damp quiet. Daniel's mind reeled through layers of connection. Belov's reappearance, the flight paths, the fake TSA agent, the mother whose husband had made powerful enemies. Someone had built a mechanism not just to smuggle components, but to frame civilians as unwitting couriers, allowing these weapons to pass unnoticed through national borders. And someone else was cleaning up loose ends. They reached a utility bay filled with sealed crates, some of which had TSA tags still intact. Owens stopped beside one, then knelt. This one's from the same Warsaw shipment, marked for local delivery. Daniel opened it. Inside, more toys. Plastic, innocuous. But one caught his eye, a walkie-talkie set with an unusual antenna. He pried it apart. Inside was another circuit, identical to the one inside the fire truck. A pattern was forming. Owens, Daniel said, we need to pull every item from that crate, log every serial. These aren't random. This is networked delivery. You think they were setting up something bigger? Daniel nodded. Or testing routes. Seeing what got flagged, what slipped through. If they built redundancy into the shipment, then this isn't one device. It's a web, and we only caught one node. Just then, his phone buzzed again. Morales, I found Belov. Daniel stopped moving. He's not in Europe anymore. DHS flagged a border entry 4 days ago. Name matched on a private charter manifest. Destination, Los Angeles. Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. He's here, yeah, Morales said. And the guy who stamped his visa in? Used to work cargo inspections. Got fired for smuggling phones in through a Brazilian shipment. But get this, his record's been sealed. No trace in the system now, they erased it. Like it never happened. Daniel inhaled slowly. 2 men. 2 records scrubbed. 1 network. Owens watched him closely. Oh, what now? Daniel looked around the room. At the crates, the disabled lights. The faint hum of something still active in the vents above. We're not just chasing a bomb, he said. We're chasing a supply chain. A damn blueprint. And then Rex turned suddenly, growled low and bolted toward the west end of the bay, where the wall wasn't concrete but a steel panel slightly ajar, and the faint scent of fuel drifted through like a whisper. The steel panel groaned as Rex pushed his weight against it, claws scraping the bottom edge where a rusted bolt barely held it to the frame. Daniel followed fast, his flashlight cutting through the narrow breach into what looked like an old jet fuel conduit once used to route ground tankers beneath Terminal C. The smell of diesel hung heavy, but that wasn't what caught his attention. It was the soft echoes of footsteps bouncing off the curve of metal walls. Just ahead and fading, Rex darted in first. tail high, his movements silent but urgent. Daniel ducked through next, followed by Owens, whose face had lost its fresh out-of-acidity shine, replaced now with a grim focus. The passage wasn't on any blueprint Daniel remembered, which made it perfect for someone trying to disappear. But as they moved deeper, stepping over old hoses and forgotten tool crates, Daniel's phone buzzed again. This time a message, not from Morales but from an airport internal alert system pinging his legacy login. Security alert, Gate D27, suspicious toy matching prior description found unattended near food court. Daniel swore under his breath and stopped mid-stride. Owens peered over his shoulder, reading the message. "It's not just one toy," Owens muttered. Daniel nodded grimly. They seeded the airport. They turned back immediately, retracing their path through the service bay back toward the main terminal. Rex hesitated once, then followed as if even he understood the urgency had shifted. By the time they reached the service elevator, Daniel was already on the phone with Morales again. "Get me passenger manifests," he barked. "Focus on families who passed through duty-free in Warsaw and Frankfurt in the last 72 hours, especially those with kids under 10. Morales, already ahead of him, replied without delay. "We flagged 3 more, all in Terminal D, each one carrying similar toys. 2 fire trucks, 1 airplane, all bought at the same shop." Daniel blinked. "Sky Smile?" "Yeah, but it gets better. It was purchased in a quiet acquisition by a holding firm called Elbrus Logistics. Sounds legit, right? Except Elbrus doesn't show up on any open investor profiles. They're a shell. Registered in Cyprus, no board members listed. You know what that means?" Daniel rubbed his jaw. "Money laundering front. He's compartmentalized every transaction, every shipment, run through separate logistics providers. This whole thing is designed to stay invisible." As the elevator dinged open, they stepped into a hallway leading directly into the terminal's main concourse. The volume of the crowd hit them like a wave, families queuing for snacks, kids weaving between legs, loudspeakers announcing delays. Rex led them without pause, darting through legs and luggage until he halted at a bench near a sandwich stand. There, a little boy sat cross-legged, pushing a red fire truck along the metal armrest. Beside him, a man, his father presumably, sipped from a paper cup, oblivious. Daniel approached carefully. "Excuse me, sir," he said, flashing the retired badge. "I need to look at that toy." The man raised a brow. "Is something wrong?" "I hope not," Daniel replied. "But I need to make sure it's not part of an ongoing issue." The man frowned but handed it over. Daniel turned the toy in his hands. Identical make, identical weight. He flipped it over and pried at the seam under one of the rear wheels. A faint click. Inside, embedded neatly beside the motor wiring, was the same compact chip he had seen earlier. "Sir, I need you and your son to come with me," Daniel said firmly. "Please don't touch the toy anymore." Rex barked once, prompting a TSA agent nearby to flinch. In under 20 minutes, 2 more children were located. One near Gate D11, the other at the international baggage claim. Both with similar toys, both purchased from Sky Smile. Owens returned from cross-referencing manifestus. The receipt codes match, all came from the same bag. Daniel's mind raced, which means this isn't just a targeted threat. It's scalable. They could trigger one or all depending on message or distraction needed. Morales called again, voice clipped. "I got a name. The listed CEO of Elbrus Logistics is a Katerina Domovic. No photo ID, no past roles. The IP address used to file incorporation papers links back to an untraceable server in Moscow. You seeing the picture?" Daniel exhaled. "They've embedded a logistics chain inside an airport retail structure. They're using our security assumptions against us." Owens paced nearby. "But if these are planted across multiple terminals, how do we even begin to locate the rest?" Daniel looked down at Rex. "We don't." "He does." Rex had already begun sniffing again, moving from luggage to stroller, tail twitching with intensity. Over the next hour, 5 more toys were found. 2 in carry-ons, 3 in trash bins, partially dismantled, likely failed handoffs or disrupted attempts. A pattern emerged, every toy traced back to a Warsaw Educational Gifts. Daniel stood in front of a whiteboard hastily set up in a private TSA meeting room, connecting strings between passenger timelines, flight codes, and distribution points. "They're testing for response time," he said aloud, pointing at a gap. "See this? The Frankfurt JFK Lariz batch, 4 hours flat. That means they're refining their drops." Morales joined via video call, dashboards glowing behind him. "This isn't just an operation, it's a proof of concept. They're using international retail as an end-to-end vector. Customs can't stop toys. Security clears anything with no immediate signal. Parents don't question gifts in their kids' bags. And once it's inside, even the handlers don't have to stay in the airport. The devices are modular." Daniel nodded slowly, the pieces locking together with sickening precision. "They can build a bomb from 3 toys placed in 3 different parts of the terminal. All they need is signal and timing." A silence settled in the room. Then Rex barked again. 3 sharp yelps, his nose pressed against a cargo crate near the edge of the security checkpoint. Daniel and Owens rushed over. A child's backpack sat atop the crate, unzipped. Inside, nestled among crayons and candy, was yet another toy. But this one was different. It wasn't alone. A small controller, something handheld disguised like a toy remote, lay beside it, blinking faintly red. The system had just been armed. The handheld controller blinked red once more, a dull pulse like a warning light that no one had intended to discover so soon. Daniel didn't waste a second. "Owens, get this area sealed. No signals in, no signals out. Jam the perimeter within 20 meters now." Owens was already radioing it in as Rex stayed glued to the backpack's tail low, muscles tense. Daniel pulled the controller from the bag, studied it. Lightweight plastic shell, disguised as a toy remote for RC cars. But fitted inside was a custom circuit board with a dual-fistum trigger system. Whoever built it knew how to slip past every standard detection protocol. Morales' voice crackled in through the secured channel. "Holt, we're picking up something strange on outbound manifests. A cargo truck left Gate C auxiliary dock 15 minutes ago. No clearance, no driver check-in. But it's pinging on the old Warsaw crate manifest." Daniel's mind snapped into gear. "Could be the rest of the payload." Morales added, "I just flagged the container ID 7X2LJ9. It was scheduled for ground delivery to a local warehouse in Gardena. Last-minute routing." Daniel didn't wait for backup. "Tell command I'm rolling. Send a QRT to meet me at cargo exit 3, and patch Rex and Owens through. They're with me." 5 minutes later, Daniel stood in the back of a hastily armored TSA response vehicle, Rex pacing beside him, panting from adrenaline but fully alert. Owens manned the front passenger seat, checking the tracking pings relayed from Morales' system. The truck they were following had no escort, no transponder signal anymore. It had gone dark after passing airport fencing, but Rex had already sniffed the tailgate minutes earlier and confirmed it matched the scent trail from the previous contraband toys. That was all Daniel needed to go full pursuit. The vehicle tore down the perimeter road, lights off, as they coordinated with LAPD to intercept the shipment before it reached any potential extraction point. The Gardena warehouse it was headed for had been previously flagged in an unrelated customs investigation into counterfeit goods. 20 minutes later, they caught up to it just beyond the airport's southern security fence. Pulled to the side of a deserted service road. The truck was still running, no driver in sight. Rex jumped down first, nose low, tail flicking as he moved around the back. Daniel and Owens followed, weapons drawn, hearts pounding. "Clear the cab first," Daniel ordered. Owens moved to the driver's side, checked the door, unlocked. Inside, empty, still warm. A coffee cup sat in the holder, half full. The keys were still in the ignition. "Someone left in a hurry," Owens muttered. Daniel turned to Rex. "Show me." Rex barked once and stood near the rear container door. Daniel pried it open slowly, and what he saw inside made his stomach lurch. 17 toys, neatly packed, identical to the ones they had recovered. Airplanes, trucks, even a couple of dolls, each modified with subtle alterations to their chassis or electronic panels. Some were incomplete, mid-assembly, others fully armed with power sources connected and wires leading into foam molds. Daniel stepped carefully and felt, "Owens, photograph everything. We need chain of custody." As they documented each piece, Rex moved deeper into the container, toward the far left corner. There, half covered by a packing blanket, was one more toy, this one a small yellow helicopter. Unlike the others, it had already been opened. Daniel lifted it and inspected the interior. Where the microblast device should have been, there was instead a thin, square component wired into a rotating gibble. He turned it slightly and caught the faint gleam of a lens. "The camera," he whispered. Owens leaned over. "What the hell? It's a microcam, active. Wide-angle lens. Thermal-lined, not for detonation, this one's for surveillance." Owens frowned. "But why swap it? Why replace the explosive with a camera?" Daniel turned the toy again, spotting the power source. "Still active, still transmitting. They're watching," he said slowly. "Just testing the security, monitoring our response. Tracking how we react, who we deploy, how long it takes us to isolate a threat." Owens stared at the lens like it was staring back. "Which means this whole it's a probe." Daniel nodded. "A live test. They weren't planning to detonate today. They were planning to see if they could." He looked around the container again, eyes scanning for anything else. Rex circled near a stack of packaging tape, and then suddenly stopped, growling low. Daniel followed the sound, crouched near where the dog had frozen, and peeled back a loose sheet of card. There, tucked in a plastic sleeve, was a printed manifest list. Handwritten annotations covered the page. Flight numbers, security codes, even names. Familiar ones. "Morales," Daniel called over comms. "We've got internal breaches. This list includes our TSA supervisor, 2 cargo staff, and a customs inspector from JFK. They've been tracking us from the inside. Holy hell, Holt, this goes deep." Daniel stepped back, holding the manifest up with gloved fingers. They embedded watchers in the system. Not just to get the toys through, but to watch where they went. Owens added quietly. "And to see if anyone got close." Daniel's jaw clenched. "We got close, and now they're trying to disappear the evidence." Rex barked again, pawing at the base of the container wall. Daniel pried open a metal plate covering the floor panel. Inside was a secondary battery unit wired to the container's structural frame. An independent power supply. Connected to it, a small black box with a blinking light. "A tracker," Owens said. "This whole truck was wired. They knew we'd find it." Daniel nodded slowly. "And they wanted us to..." He stood up, breath shallow, brain reeling through possibilities. Someone wasn't just infiltrating airport security. They were engineering controlled breaches, letting specific shipments through, watching from inside and feeding information upstream through layered proxies like Skysmalk and Elbrus. Owens spoke up. "If this container made it out and we hadn't found it..." Daniel didn't answer. He didn't have to. Outside, headlights approached slowly, QRT backup finally arriving. But Daniel wasn't ready to turn anything over just yet. There were still too many unanswered questions. He turned back toward Rex, who now stood by the open truck doors, looking outward, nose twitching toward the wind, sensing something ahead none of them could yet see. The first squad vehicle pulled into the clearing near the abandoned container. Headlights sweeping across the asphalt, casting shadows long and tense. Rex remained at the edge of the truck, ears twitching, body visibly alert, as if whatever he had sensed earlier still lingered somewhere just beyond the reach of their lights. Daniel gave the Aller signal and waved the agents forward. Owens stepped back, his hands still gloved in a protective pouch. The momentary calm was misleading. Everything they had found inside that container screamed escalation. These weren't isolated smuggling attempts anymore. They were layered breaches with deliberate purpose. Just as Daniel began directing the hazmat team to sweep the vehicle, his phone vibrated again. This time a direct call from Morales. "Holt," Morales began without preamble. "You're going to want to hear this. We found him." Daniel froze. "Who?" "Morris, the real TSA officer. We just recovered him, unconscious, in a parking garage 4 blocks from the terminal. In the back seat of a rental car. No ID, no phone. Paramedics say he was sedated. Probably dumped there after being dragged out of that maintenance corridor." "Is he talking?" Daniel asked. "Not yet. But get this. On his uniform shirt, taped under the collar, there was a note. Small, handwritten. It said, 'Don't let it find it again.'" Daniel's pulse kicked into overdrive. "We think it's Rex." The line went silent for a beat before Morales added, "Whoever planted that message knows your dog is the problem. They're not just working around detection protocols. They're actively testing ways to avoid him." Daniel looked down at Rex, whose nose was still up, scenting the air like something vital had yet to reveal itself. His gut twisted. This wasn't just about hidden devices or coordinated shipments. This was about something deeper. Something biological. He turned to Owens. Seal off this entire stretch. Nothing goes in or out without decon and a full scent screen. I need biohazard to test every trace compound in that container, especially the ones Rex was reacting to. Thought we already pulled the explosive residue? Owens asked, already relaying orders into his comms. Daniel shook his head. It wasn't just explosives. 2 hours later, the mobile lab set up behind Gate C returned preliminary findings. Daniel paced outside the tent, arms crossed, listening as the forensic tech stepped out, pale under the lamplight. We ran gas chromatography on the samples from the toy interiors, she began. The standard nitrates and plasticizers are there, but there's something else. Traces of a synthetic compound that isn't on the commercial registry. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Then where have we seen it? The tech hesitated. It matches partially with a class of compounds used in molecular disruption fields. Essentially precursors for biochemical payloads. Not weaponized on its own, but when heated or triggered, it can bind with airborne proteins in a way that amplifies respiratory infection vectors. Daniel went still. Are you telling me someone tried to sneak in bioweapon components inside toys for children? The tech nodded slowly. It's possible. And whatever Rex picked up, he wasn't just reacting to explosives. He was reacting to something far more rare. Daniel's chest tightened. You said it's synthetic? Extremely. Less than 5 known research labs handle this formula, all of them with military-grade clearance. A call beeped in on his line again, Morales. Daniel switched over. Tell me you've got something. Morales sounded grimmer than before. I ran that shipment's routing manifest again. The crate that carried the helicopter, guess where it made a stop before Warsaw? Daniel didn't respond. Tiraspol, Transnistria. No customs, no real border, no questions asked. It's a ghost port for state-level weapons trafficking. Daniel's voice was flat. So whoever's behind this isn't just experimenting. They're embedding prototype weapons into global cargo, Morales added. And they've been watching how we respond. They knew Rex could detect it even before we did. Which means the next shipment won't be something we'll catch. Daniel stared at Rex, who had now curled beside the truck's tire, but was still restless, still sniffing toward the horizon. Forget about leveling up, guys, he said to Adam. Let's go look for the thing that destroyed their command center. I'm thinking whoever picked Tiraspol as a port isn't working alone. This network spans too wide for one handler. We need to backtrace every name on that manifest, every freight handler, every customs official. Morales added one more detail before signing off. Holt? There's something else. The synthetic compound? The timestamp on the lab's synthesis signature. It's less than 6 months old. That formula is new. It hasn't even leaked into black markets yet. This is test-grade material, which means someone high up is backing this, Daniel finished. That's when one of the hazmat officers from the container site called over. Agent Holt, you need to see this. Daniel crossed the short distance to the second sealed container crate. The officer held out a set of photos taken from inside. One of them showed a foam insert with cutouts matching small devices. But the cuts weren't uniform. They had indentations shaped like camera lenses. You were planning to install visual surveillance in at least half the toys, the officer said. Not just one, multiple. Daniel exhaled slowly. They weren't just watching the airport. They were watching us. Every checkpoint, every route the toys passed through. They're mapping weak points in real time. Owens stepped forward, holding up a new report from the manifest team. Just flagged another outgoing container, same company. But this one's scheduled to depart from LAX in 3 hours. Destination, Sao Paulo. Daniel's jaw clenched. If they're exporting the same batch, then the test phase is over, Owens finished. Daniel looked down at Rex again, but Rex wasn't looking at him anymore. He had turned toward the southern horizon, ears up, nose to the wind. Something had shifted. Something was moving, and he knew it before they did. The alert came in at 3:17 a.m. The outgoing container flagged for Sao Paulo had been intercepted, halted just before being loaded onto a private cargo jet at a chartered hangar outside LAX's main freight zone. Inside, agents found what they expected, another batch of disguised toys near identical to the ones found earlier. But this time, the bomb units were only part of the story. Hidden deep in the cores of the dolls and trucks, embedded beneath layers of ordinary plastic, were microchips. Flat, almost invisible, with identifiers marked not by product codes, but by unique hash keys linked to passport scans, facial recognition timestamps, and boarding data of specific passengers from 5 separate airports. Daniel stood silently in the cold morning light, holding one of the toys in his hand as tech analysts circled around a folding table nearby, decrypting the chips one by one. The data was chilling. Each chip was programmed to ping specific mobile devices when they reached new geolocations. Parks, schools, suburban malls, anywhere high heads in routine. This wasn't just a bombing strategy. It was a mapping mechanism, a prelude to mass surveillance. Each child who received one of these toys became a tracking point for their entire family. Someone, somewhere, had built a nationwide grid off the back of holiday travel, weaponizing parental innocence and the chaos of airports to stage the largest pre-terror synchronization the country had ever faced. Daniel stepped back, Rex beside him, watching the sun begin to rise over the smog-softened skyline. It had been 3 days since the first toy was flagged. In that time, nearly 35 similar devices had been recovered from passengers across 5 states. Not all contained explosives. Many were simply network beacons, designed not to kill but to monitor, to report, to paint invisible dots on an invisible map. But even one bomb, hidden in plain sight, was enough to change everything. A car pulled up quietly behind them. The door opened. Daniel turned. It was Captain Will Morgan, retired chief of LAX's K-9 division, former handler, and Rex's original partner. He stepped out slowly, older now, a limp from an old gunshot wound still visible in his stride. But the moment Rex saw him, his body changed. The tension melted. The tail wagged once, then again, then fast. And then Rex was running. Morgan knelt as the dog leapt into his arms, not barking, not growling, just pressing in tight, as if memorizing the scent of home. Daniel stepped back, letting them have the moment. It had been Morgan who trained Rex from his first year, who taught him not just how to track drugs and devices, but how to read the spaces humans ignored. Morgan had left after a blown operation overseas, where Rex was injured and nearly decommissioned. But now, after all of this, the department had called him back, not to the field but to help restructure an entire system of detection and response that had failed under modern threats. "Looks like someone missed you," Daniel said. Morgan smiled, standing slowly, a hand resting on Rex's back. "Looks like someone saved your ass?" Daniel nodded. Twice. A DHS liaison approached them, clipboard in hand, offering Morgan an official envelope. "Your reinstatement, sir. Effective immediately. Title, Special Civilian Advisor to Homeland Threat Integration." Morgan raised a brow. "And the dog?" "Reclassified under Tier 1 Asset Protection," the agent replied. "Effective today, Sergeant Rex is no longer retired. Full status reinstated." Rex didn't seem to understand the words, but he looked between the two men and somehow, Daniel swore the dog stood taller. Later that day, a press conference was held behind closed doors. No public announcement, no mass, only classified briefings delivered to select agencies across the country. The narrative was controlled, the damage contained, but inside the Threat Analysis Center, rows of analysts stared at projection screens filled with maps, each dot representing a recovered toy, each line an attempted handoff. The full picture was terrifying. Over the last 96 hours, federal teams had recovered tracking devices in Arizona, Illinois, Oregon, and New Jersey, all tied back to the same shipment logs, all matching the signature of the synthetic compound Rex had detected first. No one had seen the scope until now, and no existing scanner, not explosive trace detectors, not X-ray, had identified the chemical blend. Only Rex had. His instincts, his scent training, had given them the window they needed. Daniel stood before one of the monitors, watching the lines converge on airports, malls, neighborhood churches. They weren't building bombs, he said aloud. They were building blind spots. Morgan joined him, and the dog saw through them. "Because he never stopped trusting what he smelled," Daniel replied. Rex sat at their feet, tongue lolling, eyes half-lidded, finally allowed to rest. By the week's end, federal protocols for cargo screening were rewritten. K9 units were prioritized over machine-on scans in multi-layered checks. Human analysis teams were paired with behavioral specialists, and a new class of compounds, those once deemed too rare to monitor, were added to every customs watch list nationwide. As for Sky Smile Duty Free, the parent company was dissolved, its assets frozen across 3 continents. Elbrus Logistics, the shell corporation that had owned it, vanished before the ink dried. Their operators were ghosts again. But this time, there was a trail. And this time, the scent had already been caught. Daniel walked with Rex one last time through the corridor near Terminal D. The place it had all begun. Families passed by without noticing. Kids hugged teddy bears and pushed wheeled suitcases. He watched them a moment longer. Funny, he muttered, kneeling beside Rex. All this started because you couldn't ignore a toy. Rex licked his hand once, then looked forward again, eyes fixed on the crowd, still watching, still ready. Just in case, if this story pulled you in, take a second to like and subscribe. It helps us bring you more true-to-life emotional stories like this. Which part hit you the hardest? Was it Rex's silent loyalty, the twist with the toys, or that final moment of recognition? Also, where are you watching from? Drop your country or city in the comments. We'd love to know how far this story reached.